When it breaks you open, I want you to stop for a second, before you press pause, before you scroll past, before you convince yourself you're okay. I need you to hear this. Because somewhere right now, there is someone sitting in a darkened room, staring at a phone screen, rereading old messages that they know they should delete but can't. Someone who ate half a meal today and called it dinner. Someone who woke up at 3 a.m. and reached for a person who isn't there anymore. Someone who smiled all day at work and cried all the way home. Maybe that someone is you. And if it is, I'm not going to tell you to just get over it. I'm not going to give you 5 quick tips to move on. I'm not going to minimize what you're carrying, because what you're carrying is real. The grief is real. The confusion is real. The ache in your chest that shows up without warning, that's real. But here is what I also know to be real. You are not falling apart. You are being rebuilt. And the next 23 minutes I need you to stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you isn't just motivational content. It's a map that shows you exactly where you are, why you're here, and where this pain is trying to take you. Stay with me. This one is for you. Here's something nobody tells you about heartbreak. It doesn't just hurt where you expect it to. It doesn't just live in the memories. It doesn't just sting when you see their name. It doesn't just show up at night. Heartbreak gets into your confidence. It whispers to you in quiet moments maybe you weren't enough. It gets into your future. Suddenly you can't picture what comes next. It gets into your identity and you start to wonder who you even are outside of that relationship. That's the cruelest part of losing someone. It doesn't just take them, it temporarily takes you. But here's what I want you to understand, and I need you to let this land deep. Pain that feels personal is almost always purposeful. The most transformational moments in any human being's story rarely feel like transformation while they're happening. They feel like collapse. They feel like failure. They feel like the end, but they are almost never the end. They are almost always the beginning of something that couldn't have started any other way, and I'm going to prove that to you today, not with empty promises, not with cliches, but with 7 undeniable truths about what your heartbreak is actually doing in your life right now. Are you ready? Let's go. Truth number 1, your heartbreak is showing you what you are willing to accept, and it's time to raise the standard. I need you to think back to the early days of that relationship. There was probably a moment, maybe small, maybe significant, where something felt off. A comment that stung, a pattern that confused you, a gut feeling you talked yourself out of, a red flag that you painted green because you wanted it to work so badly. And gradually, without even realizing it, you started adjusting. You started shrinking. You started swallowing parts of yourself to make space for someone who wasn't making space for you. You stopped saying what you really felt. You started apologizing for things that weren't your fault. You rationalized behavior that you knew, deep down, you would never accept from anyone else. And here's the most dangerous part: you got used to it. Because human beings are remarkable at adapting. We adapt to cold climates. We adapt to difficult jobs. And we adapt painfully, quietly, to relationships that are slowly diminishing us. Until the diminishing starts to feel like normal. Until the bare minimum starts to feel like love. The ending of this relationship, as devastating as it was, did something extraordinary for you. It gave you distance, and distance gave you sight. Right now, if you're honest, maybe for the first time you can see things you couldn't see when you were in it. The ways you were bending for someone who wasn't bending for you. The energy you were pouring into something that wasn't being refilled. The version of yourself you were quietly becoming smaller, quieter, less, just to keep someone who was never truly fighting to keep you. That clarity is not punishment. That clarity is protection. The universe is not cruel, but it is strategic. And sometimes the most loving thing that can happen is having the wrong thing removed so completely that you finally see it for what it was. You didn't lose everything when you lost that relationship. You got something back that is worth far more: yourself. And the standard you carry from this point forward is permanently upgraded. Not because you're bitter, because you're finally awake. Truth number 2, the wounds this relationship exposed were there before they arrived, and now, finally, they can heal. This is the truth that takes the most courage to hear. So I'm going to ask you to be brave with me. The person who broke your heart, they didn't create your deepest pain. They revealed it. Think about it honestly. The reason certain things they did affected you so profoundly, the withdrawal, the inconsistency, the way they made you feel like you had to earn their love, the reason that hit so deep is because it touched something that was already wounded long before they showed up. The fear of not being enough, that didn't start with them. The desperate need for someone to choose you, to stay, to not leave, that was already living inside you before they walked through the door. We bring our histories into our relationships, every abandonment we ever experienced, every time we were told we were too much or not enough, every wound we were handed before we were old enough to understand what was happening to us. And what we don't heal we attract, not because we're broken beyond repair, but because our unhealed places reach for familiar dynamics. Familiar not because they're healthy, but because they match the frequency of our old pain. Your fear of rejection attracted their unavailability. Your need to fix people attracted someone who needed fixing. Your belief that love has to be earned attracted someone who kept you constantly earning. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And here's the gift inside the wound. Now you can see it. Now it can be healed. This heartbreak didn't just break you. It broke you open. And what is broken open can finally receive light. What was sealed shut, protected, untouched, it can finally be tended to. The work you do on yourself in this season, the therapy, the journaling, the honest conversations, the sitting with your own emotions instead of running from them, that is not weakness. That is the most powerful investment you will ever make in your future. Because the healed version of you doesn't attract the same patterns. The healed version of you recognizes those patterns and walks the other way. The healed version of you doesn't need to be chosen by someone incapable of choosing, because you have already chosen yourself. Do the work. This is the season for it. This ending is a redirection, and where you're being redirected is better than where you were headed. I want you to imagine something with me. You're driving. You have a destination in mind. You're certain of it. You've planned the route. You've been on this road for a while. And then unexpectedly, frustratingly, the road ends. Detour signs everywhere. You cannot go the direction you planned. In that moment, you have two choices. You can sit at the detour and rage against it, refuse to move, stare at where the road used to be and grieve the route you had planned. Or you can follow the detour and discover that it takes you somewhere the original road never could have reached. That is exactly what is happening in your life right now. The plan you had, the future you pictured, it isn't destroyed. It's redirected. And I want to push even deeper than that, because sometimes we mourn a future that was never actually going to fulfill us. We mourn the idea of the relationship more than the reality of it. We mourn the person we believed they could become, the version of them we saw on the best days, the dream we projected onto them. But dreams projected onto the wrong person are not love stories, they're illusions. And the most merciful thing that can happen is for the illusion to break before it takes more of your life. The redirection is not evidence that something went wrong. The redirection is evidence that something greater is being protected. There is a version of your future with real love, with genuine partnership, with deep connection that cannot be reached on the road you were on. That version requires this turn, this exact painful, unwanted turn. Yes, the detour is harder. The detour feels wrong at first. Every detour does. But keep driving, keep moving, keep trusting that whoever is orchestrating this journey can see the destination even when you can't. You are not lost. You are being led. Heartbreak is teaching you what love actually feels like, so you'll recognize it when it's real. Let me ask you something I want you to answer honestly, even if the answer is uncomfortable. In that relationship, were you at peace? I mean genuinely at peace, not just happy in the good moments, not just calm when things were stable. I mean the deep, settled, consistent peace of knowing you were safe with someone, of knowing they were truly for you, of not having to wonder or guess or perform or shrink. Because a lot of what we call love, especially the love that hurts most when it ends, was never actually peace. It was intensity, and we confuse the two. We confuse the anxiety of wondering if they would call with excitement. We confuse the relief of them showing up after pulling away with safety. We confuse the emotional highs and crashes of an unstable relationship with passion. We confuse needing someone so desperately that losing them feels unsurvivable with love. That is not love. That is emotional dependency. And it is one of the most common and least talked about experiences in modern relationships. Real love is radically different from what many of us were taught to expect. Real love is almost boring in the best possible way. It doesn't spike your anxiety. It doesn't keep you up at night wondering where you stand. It doesn't require you to be a detective, an actor, or a therapist. Real love shows up consistently. It has the same face on a Monday that it had on Saturday. It doesn't disappear when life gets hard. It leans in. Real love lets you breathe. It lets you be loud and soft and messy and uncertain without any fear of being abandoned. Real love doesn't make you feel like you are always one wrong move away from losing it. And here is the profound gift of going through what you went through. It has permanently recalibrated your compass. You now know in your body, not just your mind, what it felt like to be anxious in love, what it felt like to shrink, what it felt like to wonder, And that knowledge becomes the filter through which you will evaluate every future connection. When someone shows up with consistency, with peace, with warmth that has no conditions, you will recognize it. Not just intellectually, in your bones, because you've felt the contrast. Heartbreak didn't make you bitter. It made you wise. And wisdom is one of the rarest, most valuable things a person can carry into love. The person this heartbreak is building you into is exactly who the right relationship needs you to be. This might be the most important thing I say in this entire message, so I need you to really receive this. The right relationship doesn't just require the right person. It requires the right version of you, and the right version of you is not built in comfort. It is not built in seasons where everything is easy and stable and predictable. It is built in the fire, in the waiting, in the seasons where you have to learn to stand on your own, to trust yourself, to believe in your worth without someone else confirming it for you. Right now, in the middle of this heartbreak, you are developing capacities you could not have developed any other way. You are learning patience, real patience, not the kind that just waits, but the kind that trusts while waiting. That is a different thing entirely. You are learning self-awareness, understanding your patterns, your triggers, your needs, your non-negotiables. That self-awareness will make you a better partner than you have ever been in your life. You are learning resilience, that you can survive the worst emotional pain of your life and still get up, still show up, still function, still move forward. That resilience will serve you in every relationship and every challenge from this point forward. And you are learning who you are outside of being someone's partner. That is foundational. Because until you know who you are alone, truly alone, you will always be at risk of disappearing into someone else. The version of you being built right now through tears, through sleepless nights, through the conversations with yourself that nobody else hears, that version of you is extraordinary. And here is what I need you to hold on to when everything feels purposeless. The love you are being prepared for is worth the preparation. It is not going to come to the version of you that skipped this work. It is going to come to the version of you that sat in the fire and did not give up. That chose growth when it would have been so much easier to choose bitterness. That decided to believe in love again even after it hurt. Don't rush this season. Don't short-circuit it. Let it build you into the person who is finally ready, truly ready for something real. This heartbreak is stripping away a false source of security, and what replaces it is unshakable. Here is something I want you to sit with. When that relationship was intact, as flawed as it may have been, it gave you something you didn't even realize you needed so desperately. A sense of ground beneath your feet. Someone to text in the morning. Someone whose name appeared in your future plans. Someone whose presence made the uncertainty of life feel a little more manageable. And when they left, the ground went with them. That's why heartbreak doesn't just feel like grief. It feels like free fall. But here is the question I want you to ask yourself, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. How much of your security was actually built on this person? How much of your identity was wrapped up in being loved by them? How much of your sense of okayness depended on their consistency? How much of your confidence came from simply being chosen? Because any security built on another person is fragile by nature. People change. People leave. People have their own storms that have nothing to do with you. And if your foundation is them, when they shake, you shatter. The heartbreak you're experiencing is not just loss. It is an invitation to build something that no person can ever take from you. A security that lives inside you. A sense of worth that doesn't require external validation to survive. A foundation that holds even when the people around you don't. That kind of wholeness doesn't come from another relationship. It doesn't come from staying busy. It doesn't come from telling yourself you're fine when you're not. It comes from doing the deep, quiet, sometimes grueling work of knowing yourself, trusting yourself, believing in your own worth, especially on the days when nobody else is affirming it. And when you build that, when your foundation is internal, something remarkable happens. You stop attracting love from a place of desperation, and you start attracting love from a place of wholeness. And love that comes to a whole person looks completely different from love that comes to a desperate one. It's calmer. It's healthier. It's reciprocal. It lasts. This is the version of love worth waiting for, and you cannot get there without first losing the false security you were leaning on. The collapse was the invitation. Don't waste it. When the right love arrives, you will recognize it, because heartbreak taught you exactly what to look for. Before this heartbreak, you had ideas about what you wanted in love: chemistry, attraction, someone exciting, someone who made your heart race, someone who swept you completely off your feet. And none of those things are wrong. But heartbreak has added something to your understanding that you can never unlearn: discernment. Because now you know what red flags actually feel like, not in theory, but in your body. You know what it feels like to ignore your gut and pay the price. You know what it feels like to be with someone who brings out the most exhausted version of you. The smallest version of you. The version of you that was always performing, always auditioning, always trying to be enough. And so when peace walks into your life, and you will recognize it. When someone is consistent without being asked. When they show up on the ordinary Tuesday, not just the dramatic moments. When they make you feel safe enough to be completely, unapologetically, imperfectly yourself, you will feel the difference. Not because they are perfect, but because they are real, and you finally know what real feels like. You will notice the green flags you never paid attention to before. The person who is the same in every room, the one whose words actually match their actions over time, the one who doesn't make love feel like a competition or a performance or a test you might fail, and you will trust yourself to receive it because you did the work, because you know who you are now, because you're no longer bringing unexamined wounds into new connections and wondering why you keep ending up in the same place. The right love is not going to look like what you lost. It is going to look like what you learned you actually need, and you would not have known that without exactly this. So here is where I want to leave you. If you are in the middle of heartbreak right now, if you are in the rawness, the confusion, the grief of it, I need you to hear this not as a motivational speech, but as a personal message written directly for you. This is not the end of your story. You are in the middle of a chapter that feels like the last page, but it is not. It is actually the most important chapter in your entire story because it is the chapter where everything you have been through finally starts to become something. The pain you are feeling is not evidence that you are broken. It is evidence that you loved, deeply, fully, vulnerably. And the capacity to love like that even when it cost you everything is not a weakness. It is one of the most extraordinary things about you. So don't close it off. Don't armor up. Don't decide that love isn't worth it because this particular love wasn't built to last. Instead, grieve. Give yourself full permission to feel every single layer of this. Honor what you lost. Don't rush yourself. Don't let anyone put a timeline on your healing. But while you grieve, also grow. Let this break you open in all the ways that lead somewhere. Let it build what only heartbreak can build. Let it clear what needed clearing. Heal what needed healing. Redirect what needed to be redirected. Because on the other side of this, and I mean this with everything I have, there is a version of your life that is more whole, more true, and more aligned with who you actually are than anything you have experienced before. And there is a love waiting for you that can only reach the person you are becoming through this exact season. Don't give up on that person. Don't give up on that love. You are not in ruins. You are under construction, and what is being built is going to be extraordinary.